All right. How's it going? I'm Tommy Battaglia. Welcome back to the Full Saints podcast. I'm joined by Devin Mann and Mr. Leo Sullivan. I'm happy you're here.
Glad to be here.
All right. We kind of first want to start out with like your time at Saints. And before we were kind of talking about how it was a completely different time in the 60s. And so we were wondering, like, what did Saints look like? We know there was like a street like right down the middle. But yeah, so like what was it kind of like? How was it different?
Well, it was the old campus. So we had two academic buildings, both single story, Sullivan Hall and Sheehan Hall. Other than that, it was the old campus. We did have a larger student body. We were talking earlier about it. I don't know why, but I think we had 800 to 850 at the time, larger classes.
It's like seven.
Yeah. 750,
yeah.
somewhere
right now.
today. Yeah.
But the big thing, I was 59 to 63.
Yep.
I would say it was a transitional period, not so much for Saints, but for society. I mean, we were kind of coming out of the Eisenhower era into the 60s, you know, with rock and roll and civil rights and Vietnam, anti-Vietnam protests, women's rights, drugs, you know, the whole thing. So we were like a transition class, the class of 63.
Yeah, a lot of people choose not to like talk about that era. Yeah. Like it was kind of like so much change that like it's kind of just like shunned away a bit. When you're here, did you play football?
Nope. Didn't play any sports here.
Really?
Nope.
All right. Were you more just an academic guy?
Academic. I was student body president.
Oh, okay.
So I was involved in that and yearbook and the newspaper. More of the Soch stuff, you know. I was a Soch guy.
Right now, I'm the junior class president, and then same thing last year. And Devin he's just a rock star, as you remember. Yeah. We kind of wanted to talk about like, because you helped pretty much with like some of the improvements around Saints. Kind of with like organizing like the finances around it. So like what were those kind of like meetings, like drafting up like the new school? What were they like?
Well, Father Keller was actually who recently passed away.
Oh yeah, I heard.
He was the man behind this. Father Keller, who I'm sure you knew, was a very quiet, unassuming man that got things done.
Really?
He really could get things done. And he decided that we should do this. The campus needed to be rebuilt. It was run down and wasn't adequate for the students anymore. He started it. The first few meetings where everybody was kind of nonplussed, you know, that's not possible and can't do it, or if we are going to do it, let's just do a little project here, a little project there. But he pushed it. I mean,
really?
Here, you know, here we are. They spent $50 million so far on building the campus.
Well, yeah, did you see our new field?
I saw the new field.
That was just put in.
It's a great 50 mil.
Yeah. This summer, and then obviously the basketball court right behind us.
I noticed the new field still has squared corners, you know, just like it did when we were here. So that you can't use it now or then for regulation meets, I assume.
Yeah, no, you cannot.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. Beautiful. The campus looks beautiful.
Yeah, and so after your time at Saints, you went on to serve in the military.
I went to college, so from Saints, I went to the University of San Francisco, graduated in '67. Then I was in the Army for 3 years, and then I went to law school after that for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I finished law school in '74, came back to San Diego to practice law, private practice of law. Retired last year after 50 years. Loved
Congrats.
it. Loved everything about it. Here I am.
So tell me about your time in the military. What were you doing? I know you just said Army, but like what was some of the stuff you were doing?
To put it in perspective, when we graduated in 1963, Vietnam was little known, just kind of in the background. We had about 16,000 soldiers in Vietnam at the time, all advisors, no fighting troops. 2 years after we graduated, 1965, there were 200,000 Americans over there. 2 years after that, there were 500,000.
500,000.
So, and along with that, the draft.
Yeah. Oh.
For the class of 63, 64, 65, through the 60s, the draft influence even dictated every decision of our lives. It dictated whether you went to school.
Yeah.
If you could get a student deferment, but you had to carry 12 units.
Do you want to have a family?
If you fell below 12 units, they drafted you. You could get out of the draft if you were married or had a child or joined the National Guard or had medical conditions.
Oh my gosh.
But every decision we made in the 60s was influenced by that war and by that.
Oh
time.
my gosh, that's wait. So were a lot of people kind of trying to like purposely like avoid getting drafted? Like
millions.
did you get drafted?
They estimate that over 10,000 actually fled the country. Some people say as high as 100,000. They moved to Canada to avoid it. There's lots of ways to avoid it. The draft became very unfair. It essentially hit the poorer, less educated kids that didn't have the alternatives or the influence or the pull or the connections to avoid it. In 1969, they tried to solve that problem with a lottery. So in 1969, it was a lottery. Your number got pulled by birth date, and if you were low on the list, you got drafted. High on the list, you didn't.
Wow.
But until then, it was very unfair. So I was ROTC, Army ROTC in college. I was 3 years in the Army. I spent a year in Thailand, a year in Infantry Center at Fort Ord, and then a year in Vietnam with the 1st Cavalry Division, which is Air Mobile Infantry Division. They got out, went to law school after that.
Wow. Yeah, Devin and I were looking at kind of like some of your achievements.
Your
It was which one?
A bronze medal.
Yeah, the
like
bronze
air
medal.
Service.
Bronze Star for service. So not for valor. I got to make that clear because this is controversial among veterans, where people inflate their accommodation. So you could get a Bronze Star for valor, service, achievement. Mine was for service, which essentially means somebody thought you did a good job.
Oh, okay.
I have an air medal, which is a little means a little more to me at least. I was in an air mobile division, and you get an air medal depending on how much flying and how much of your work was involved with it.
So were you a pilot if you were?
No, I was actually a staff officer. I was the S1 adjutant of a brigade in the 1st Cavalry Division.
Wow.
Okay.
But the 1st Cav was entirely helicopter. I mean, we didn't even try to keep the roads clear. There are 450 helicopters in this division. I mean, if you went to the bathroom, you took a helicopter.
Oh my God!
So everywhere you went, everything you did was by air. You remember the movie Apocalypse Now?
Oh yeah.
That was that division, the 1st Cav.
Oh, okay.
And the movie When We Were Young and whatever, it's another one from true story about a 1965 battle, was also that division.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, one of my classmates was in that division, the 1st Cav, 2 years before me, and was killed in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Vince Hauser.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like to kind of like talk about their time in Nam. So like if you're open to it, like we would definitely love to, like, was there ever a moment when you were like honestly like fearing your life, or like when like things got like super like kind of like gnarly, or like a cool like story you like to tell? Because like I was talking to this one guy, his helicopter got shot down. His friend's leg was like he had to amputate it. He had to carry him through the jungle for like 2 weeks, living off like bugs and stuff. So there's so much stuff that could happen. Did anything crazy ever happen, or?
No.
Okay, I mean it's better than it didn't.
In Vietnam, 9 out of 10 soldiers were support troops: mechanics, postal clerks, company clerks, drivers, mess sergeants. So 9 out of 10 over there were actually not in combat, and I was not in combat.
Okay.
The way Vietnam was organized, we generally lived in fire bases, which was similar to Afghanistan, where the Army just set up a perimeter and you lived in the middle of it. We were rocketed and mortared frequently, but you had to be very, very unlucky because these bases were fairly large. You had to be pretty unlucky to get hit, but so there was danger. But no, I was never a combat soldier. I was more of a I hate to use this word, but I was really more of a tourist in that I had a big job and I worked hard and I did my duty, but I also got to see so much, in part because we were air mobile. I could kind of go anywhere I wanted, Saigon or Phuc Vinh or wherever, Da Nang.
Wow, what was that like?
So I got to see what was going on in the whole country. I was up on the Cambodian border, for instance, at the time of the 1970 incursion into Cambodia. I did my job. I did my job well. I did my duty. I served, but I was not a combat guy. Some of my classmates were. Charles Stout of my class was in the 173rd Airborne Division. He was a combat guy. Vince Hauser, who I mentioned, who was the star of our senior play. He had the leading role in the senior play. Died 1967, so 4 years after we got out. Yeah. About 11 of our class, we think, served in Vietnam.
Okay.
Wow. So that would be about 7% of us.
Yeah.
And about 15 to 20% of us were in the military one way or another.
Yeah. And then we were kind of talking before of how your generation, in a way, kind of mirrors like our generation, of how like obviously like, there's like the war in Ukraine going on, or everything going on in the Middle East, and so like how would you say, like in what certain aspects do you like see that reflection?
Well, I was thinking about that on the drive over today with the election just a week or two away.
Yes.
The country seems so divided. It is divided, but on the drive over, I was thinking it's really not the first time, and we've survived this before. So in the 60s, it was a lot worse. You know, many historians looking back, and even then, thought there was a good chance the company would just become fragmented and you know, and just become disrupted. We had. So when we graduated in '63, in the '60s, we had everything. We had the civil rights marches, we had the women's rights, we had drugs, we had the war, the anti-war.
Oh my gosh.
We had rock and roll, you know, the Beatles.
Oh my God.
It was just everything. I mean, coming out of Saints, which is a fairly protected environment, more so even then, but such a protected environment. Coming out of Saints and living through the next half dozen years of the 60s was just mind-blowing. I mean, it's like you're just getting...
Everything was like happening at once.
Yeah.
But if you think of it, by the late 60s, we're still in the war. So the country was divided over the war. The country was divided over drugs. The country was divided over rock and roll. I mean, our you know, many of our parents still you know, objected to that kind of music.
It was like frowned upon.
Well, by many parents, I mean, they still like to listen to Frank Sinatra. So it was a very, very divided time. We had assassinations, Kennedy and Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy.
Oh my
We had at the end of that era, we had Watergate in 1974 when Nixon was, you know, had to leave office. I mean, it was one thing after another, and there were people on both sides of every issue. A lot more violence in the streets, just a lot more on it.
Yeah, like riots and stuff.
Everything from civil rights to anti-war demonstrations to, you know, to you name it.
Would that be like a daily basis that there'd always just be some type of riot?
Yeah, some tension.
Well, the tension certainly was. I wouldn't say on a daily basis, but
daily riots.
But it was much more frequent. Much more frequent than now. We saw the intensity of street demonstrations during Rodney King and more recently
the Rodney Kings.
But it came and occurred and then kind of died back. In the 60s, it was just more constant and not always on the same subject. It could be anti-war. It could be, you know, a thousand things.
Well, yeah, like when we're kind of talking about, like, there was so much. I like to think that when like people are like tasked with like confrontation or tasked with a problem, that completely like springs and sprouts innovation. So like if we're thinking about it, this could serve as like I like to think that like God makes everything happen for a reason. You know, everything happens for a reason. My grandma's taught me that. But I just want to think that like with this war like going on then, like think about all the innovation and improvements that the country like had after that. You know what I mean? Even if we're just talking music, those were some of the best songs that came from that era over like Buffalo Springsteen, all that stuff, all over the anti-war.
You're still listening to our music.
I still listen to it. I think I listened to it on the way over here.
The Beach Boys?
Yeah.
Probably listened to the Beach Boys.
Oh, they were San Diego. They were
in San Diego. They were Los Angeles.
I heard they used to play when they were super young. They used to play in PB.
Oh, it could be.
When they were like super young, and my grandparents would go like in high school. Could be. But hopefully now we can kind of understand that obviously there's these wars going on. Everything in the Middle East, everything in Ukraine, all this tension. Sure, with the new like elections, but hopefully we can like address the fact that it will spring innovation. This could be a good period for the United States.
You know, and think when my generation growing up after high school in the 60s into the 70s, our parents all thought we were basically losers, that we were going nowhere. I mean, we were wearing bell-bottom trousers and we had long hair and smoking dope, and you know they thought it's over. These guys are going nowhere. But look what has occurred since then. The innovation that my generation has brought. I mean, we could look today at everything from Facebook to Microsoft to Apple to Starships, Elon Musk's companies. I mean, it's so much of that came from my generation, which the generation before thought were losers. And I do know from talking to my friends that that my generation sometimes looks at your generation as not quite up to snuff, and that especially among males. So remember when we started, when I graduated from Saints, which is all boys, I went to the University of San Francisco. It was all boys at the time. I mean, women were excluded really from most everything except nursing and teaching and a few other things. My sister-in-law, for instance, who's a retired judge, was one of 2 or 3 women in her law school class at Santa Clara. Well, now 60% of the students in law school are women. Same with medical school. So that's a big change that also led back to the innovation you're talking about. I mean, we were able to capitalize on that resource.
Good, yeah, at least something comes out of it.
But as a result, males are, my generation wonders if males are competing as well as they might be with what they have to compete with.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at something. We were actually at OOP. And I got pulled into a conversation, debate in a class. They were talking, they just read an article about how there's currently a masculinity problem in the world, and that masculinity is kind of declining, and that they said that out of 100 girls that get a bachelor's degree, there's 74 men. And so, but I think that this might be happening. We shouldn't address it with such a critical lens almost, but we can just say that have we thought though that this could be an improvement, because we haven't seen these numbers for women in the past. There's been so much support towards them going to college and them having full careers, and it's just growth, and that same kind of support. Maybe we've kind of we've realized that it hasn't been shown to men because it's been showed to women so much. But I think honestly it's a good thing. And I don't think there's a masculinity crisis in the United States, and I think it's functioning exactly how it should be.
Well, I wouldn't call it a crisis. And men certainly have as much or more opportunities still, as women. The question is, are they taking advantage of it?
And using their resources well.
Yeah. I mean, back when affirmative action first came in, it was designed to assist basically Black Americans, to get into college and to succeed in college. That was controversial at the time, kind of stayed controversial over the years. If we still had affirmative action, white males would be the beneficiaries. Yeah. The colleges will do anything to get white males into the classes.
Yeah, and so after the military, you went on to UC Davis Law?
I went to UC Davis Law School, correct.
Yeah, and then we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about his law career.
Yeah, law career, yeah.
And just kind of how you wound up doing that after the military.
Well, I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer for no particular reason, probably from watching Perry Mason, which was a law show on TV, back in the 50s and early 60s. But I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, and I loved being a lawyer. I practiced in private practice in San Diego for 50 years, which means I wasn't in the DA's office. I didn't work for the city attorney or U.S. attorney. I worked for private clients. So you would come to me for a lawsuit or a will or
anything in specific, like family law or?
Most of my career was in large-scale real estate development.
Oh,
so
okay.
I represented.
That's how you ended up helping here.
So I represented developers and landowners who were developing and building shopping centers, high-rise buildings, big apartment complexes, data centers, all over the western United States, and some back east, Boston, North Carolina. But that was the focus of most of my career, certainly the last 30 years or so.
So then after law, transitioning back into Saints, how did that really work to find the role that you played?
How did you wind up back here helping out?
I was trying to remember how long ago that was. It was, the principal at the time was Father John Sanders.
Oh, I heard so many stories from my dad about him.
And when I was here, he was a freshman when I was a senior.
Okay.
And
Oh.
so we knew each other slightly.
Mm-hmm.
But he invited me to join the board of directors, and I declined at the time because I was busy. And then he died. And I thought, boy, I should do this. So I joined the board of directors. I don't know how long ago that was, 20, 30 years ago? Or?
Mr. Hearn said you started helping out in 2007. So yes, that would be almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe, okay. So I started on the board of directors, kind of ran the finance committee, and then started serving on some other committees. I was involved for, seems like longer than that, but with Hogar Infantile, the orphanage,
heard.
the Augustinian
And then you were actually, you were granted affiliate of the St. Augustine Order.
an affiliate of the Augustinian Order,
Yeah.
correct, yeah.
That's awesome.
And then right now I'm still, I served on the board of the foundation. The Augustinians run a foundation where they give grants of $1 million plus every year to different Augustinian
Like
enterprises.
Villanova.
Yeah.
They give a scholarship actually to each high school, Augustine High School in the United States.
Yeah, they do a lot.
Devin and I both flew out there.
Yeah, we went to Savvy.
Yeah, we went to Savvy. We went to Villanova. We went to Malvern Preparatory School. Actually, Saints is hosting Savvy this year. It's kind of like a
good.
conference
Yeah.
with all the schools come together.
Yeah.
We're hosting it this year in November.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So did you work with other Augustinian schools around the country then, if you were on the?
I didn't, other than Villanova, so
okay.
up in Ojai.
Oh, yeah.
That was Father Max.
Yeah, that was
Father Max's
who was there?
school. Brady.
Brady and Alex.
Alex.
Yeah, yeah. I have a good Villanova story.
Really? Oh, yeah.
Has to do
Let
with,
it rip.
Has to do with Hogar Infantile.
Okay.
So I probably shouldn't mention his name. Well, I'll mention his name, Cruz. So there was a young kid. There's a young kid that came to Hogar Infantile, probably is 8 or 9 years old.
Okay.
Who was bright and hardworking, and just seemed like
He was an orphan there?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Many are orphans. Many came from broken homes or were placed in there by the authorities. So I really don't know his background. But he was there, and he did well in school. And then up through he was 13 or 14 when he finished their middle school. And we got him in because of the generosity of the Augustinians into Villanova Prep up in Ohio. It was very difficult, just getting passports and visas and that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And the first year he didn't do very well because his English was just terrible.
Yeah.
He went in as a sophomore, and he didn't do very well. He was immediately on probation. He was a soccer player, couldn't play soccer. So that summer was the COVID summer.
Okay.
And,
Oh, wow. This was recent. This was really
So
recent.
that summer was the COVID summer.
Yeah, like 2020.
2019.
And so he came, he couldn't go back to Mexico because the orphanage was locked down. If he'd gone to Mexico, he couldn't have got back because of COVID. So he came and lived with my wife and I.
Oh, my God.
For the summer. It was very difficult to keep him busy. He had to take a makeup class in order to get back in. My wife's a teacher, so she worked with that, and I tried to keep him busy doing different sports, but there was nothing going on during COVID.
Yeah.
But I did take him to a tennis
time.
lesson at Marley Field. My wife had a new racket she wasn't using. He didn't like it. He didn't like tennis at all. It lasted about 10 minutes, and we gave that up. So I flash forward a year. I go to his graduation up in Villanova, and he gets an award. He got a couple of awards. He got an award for athletics for tennis.
No way.
And he showed me this picture of the tennis team, and there he is sitting in front with my wife's racket. Cruz did great. He got off probation. The next summer he had to also take a makeup course in order to stay there, but it was math. So the English skills didn't matter, and he was just very bright and very good at it. So he really thrived.
Awesome.
He's now down. The orphanage is still supporting him. He's down in Tijuana in culinary school.
Super, wow.
Oh, wow. Good
That's
for him.
super, super good to hear. And then going along with the whole Augustinian thing, you're actually nominated for the Augustinian Achievement
Augustinian
Award
Achievement
this
Award.
January. You're the father of the St. Augustine High School bylaws. Mr. Hearn was telling us.
Probably.
Something like
I kind of forgot. I do remember drafting back in the day when who came here? Your principal and your president came here.
Mr.
And
Hearn.
I do remember drafting their first employment agreement. So I think they've been here longer than, I don't know when they came.
Been here a while.
Yeah, Mr. Hearn and I were talking about it, and we're so grateful for everything you've done for the school.
Yes.
Well, glad to be a part. Glad it's still here, and glad the young men are still thriving.
Yes, everyone. I'm pretty sure everyone's
Yeah,
happening here.
if you're at Saints, you're thriving.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming out.
Yes, thank you.
That's
You're
kinda what
welcome.
we talked about.
Thank you for inviting
so
me.
much.
Thank you for inviting me. Okay.
All right.
All right.
James, we good?
Are we off?
Boom.